Probably no living human being in the world has affected more lives through his books in the last quarter century than the man I'm about to introduce. His 14 books have sold more than 25 million copies in 18 languages in Braille, and have influenced all elements of our society, from presidents to rock stars, from millionaires to prison convicts, from professional athletes to those men and women who are struggling so hard to free themselves from drug or alcohol addiction. He has also appeared on more than 1,200 radio and television programs around the world. He was an American Air Force officer in World War II and holds the Air Medal and with 5 oak leaf clusters, plus the Distinguished Flying Cross. Following an impressive sales career, he served as executive editor and president of Success Unlimited magazine for 15 years before retiring at the youthful age of 52 to spend all of his time writing, lecturing, and golfing. He's listed in Who's Who in America and Who's Who in the World, was the first recipient of the Napoleon Hill Gold Medal for literary achievement, and in 1984 became only the 14th individual inducted into the International Speakers Hall of Fame. His first book, The Greatest Salesman in the World, has become the all-time bestseller for salespeople in the entire world. And although The Greatest Salesman was published more than a quarter of a century ago, it still continues to sell more than 100,000 copies a month. That's more than 1 million copies a year, from Tokyo to Mexico to Rome. As a matter of fact, I have my personally autographed copy in Japanese, and you may read it if you like. Every generation produces a special and unique voice, a voice crying in the wilderness, a voice telling us that we already have all the tools needed to change our lives for the better, to become the persons that we were created to be, if we choose to change and to become that person. To all of you who have already been influenced by his words, and to those of you who are about to be exposed to this great man's message for the first time, I'm so very proud to introduce to you Og Mandino. Og?
Jack Boland, thank you. Thank all of you for filling this lovely room to capacity and for your loving and warm reception. I appreciate it very much. There was a cartoon in the New Yorker magazine about 2 years ago which depicted a little kid, 4 or 5 years old, dressed in a tuxedo, little shorts, big black bow tie, standing at the footlights looking out over 2 or 3 rows of this very distinguished evening gown and tuxedoed audience, and he was holding a violin in one hand and a bow in the other, and he was leaning over, and he was saying to this very distinguished crowd, "Ladies and gentlemen, before I begin, I just want to remind all of you one more time that I'm only 5 years old. And I just want to remind all of you one more time that I'm just an author. And I do my very best work, I think, in a room they have set aside for me. I'm in there alone with my blue jeans and an old T-shirt, and sometimes I let the beard grow for 2 or 3 days. And I'm wrestling over this old typewriter trying to shape words into sentences and sentences into paragraphs and paragraphs into pages. And after about 2 years, more or less, hopefully I have a new book. And there's no audience watching. I don't hear any applause, no laughter, and certainly no standing ovations. And so whenever I stand up in front of a lovely crowd like this, I always feel that probably the best chance I have of letting you all go away from here with a nice impression of me is maybe if I performed a miracle up here. And you know what? I'm going to try to do that before this evening's over. I really am going to try to perform a miracle up here. Still, because of the books I've been lucky enough to write through the years, I do get invited to speak at great groups like this. And I'm amazed as I travel around the world, because speeches now are going everywhere, Lisbon and Australia and everywhere. I'm amazed. I very often get to share the platform with some of the best professional speakers in the world. And in the last year and a half or so, many of them seem to have gone on a nostalgia kick. They've reached back into the old music hall days and they borrowed a routine that the old baggy pants comedians used to use. And I'm sure you've seen and maybe suffered through a few of them. But anyway, when they're introduced, they don't just come walking up to the platform and say, "Good evening, ladies and gentlemen." They come running down the aisle, or they come leaping out from backstage, and they're waving their arms, and they're kicking their feet, and by the time they get to the lectern, they're out of breath, and they grab that microphone, and they say, "Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. A funny thing happened to me tonight on the way to the auditorium." And then they tell a joke. And the joke is funny because it involves somebody in the audience that everybody knows, or maybe a local politician or a local landmark, but the joke is funny and the audience laughs, and this lovely rapport is built up between the speaker and the audience, and the speech is a guaranteed, locked-in success. Well, ladies and gentlemen, I want you to know that in the past 10 years, I probably have given about 600 speeches. From Sydney, Australia to Lisbon, from Mexico City to Guatemala City, from Vancouver to Cape Town. And nothing funny has ever happened to me on the way to any of them. Until tonight. Was walking through the lobby. Jack was just ahead of me. Young man came running up to me carrying a plastic shopping bag, tapped me on the shoulder, and I turned and he said, "Are you Og Mandino?" And I said, "Yes, I am." He said, "Sir, do you have a minute?" And I looked at Jack, and Jack kind of nodded his head. And so we went over to this little table out there by a window. And he said, "Sir, my wife is an Og Mandino nut. She has read everything you have ever written." He said, "and she's brokenhearted today." He says, "She's a teacher. She couldn't come this afternoon, and she can't come tonight because they're having an important meeting. And what I thought I'd do is something with love." He said, "I bought one of every one of your books that's in the bookstore." And he said, "I wonder, next Thursday is her birthday. Would you autograph these books for her?" And I said, "I'd be happy to." So I took out my little pen and I proceeded to write. As I'm talking, I'm looking around to see if I can see him. "To Elizabeth with love, happy birthday, Og Mandino. To Elizabeth with love, happy birthday, Og Mandino." We did the whole, I think it was 7 books. And he puts them back in his little plastic bag and gave me a timid thank you, little hug. And he turned and started to walk away. And I forgot to keep my mouth shut. When he was about 15 feet away from me, I yelled after him, "Hey, is this going to be a surprise for Elizabeth?" And he turned with the most beautiful smile on his face and he said, "It certainly will be, sir. She's expecting a new Toyota Celica." There's an old Japanese legend which tells us that many thousands of years ago in the central part of Japan, there was a mountain with a flat top surrounded by dense jungle. And according to the legend, the mountain was called the place where you leave your parents. The mountain was called the place where you leave your parents. if one's parents reached a certain age and they were still alive, their children carried them bodily through the jungle, up to the top of this mountain, and they left them there for the gods. One day we see a strapping young man fighting his way through the underbrush, heading right for the mountain, carrying on his strong shoulders a wisp of an old lady. And as he fought and pushed his way through the jungle, through the brush, heading right for the mountain, he noticed that she was doing something with her hand. And finally, he turned and looked up at her, half in anger and guilt at what he was doing, and half in anger at her, and he asked, "Mother, what are you doing?" And the old lady looked down at her son, tears streaming down her wrinkled cheeks. Her eyes filled only with love for her boy. And she said, "Son, I'm just breaking off a few branches and dropping them to mark a path so that after you leave me, you'll be able to find your way back home." Well, I'm afraid they're getting closer every day to that moment when somebody's going to be lugging me off to my mountain. But before they do tonight, if you let me, I'd like to break a couple of branches for you. The memory experts tell us, this always shakes up other speakers when they hear me say it. The memory experts tell us that we can only remember about 10% of what we hear 10 minutes after we hear it. And I don't want that to happen to you tonight. And so I really and truly am going to try to perform a miracle up here. A mini miracle, but a miracle that may help you later on to recall what I'm going to say tonight about those two very abused words called success and happiness. Might help you at another time when you might need it a lot more than you do this particular evening. You see, like the laws of nature, the laws of gravity, the laws of physics, the true principles of success have been with us for thousands of years, and they've never changed. And these old principles, they're going to work for you, or they're going to work against you. Whether you're a salesman, an executive, an athlete, a coach, the head of a company, a parent, doesn't matter what you do for a living. But we're living in a crazy age, aren't we? An age that sometimes seems to be traveling faster than the speed of light, and so we're all looking for fast answers. We figure we have to have a fast, quick answer just to survive. We're all looking for elevators to success, for free lunches, for easy solutions. And in looking for this quick fix to our problems, we have become so blinded to the old principles that have always worked and always will work, that even though they are still right under our nose, we don't see them anymore, and so we think of them as secrets. Example. And now for the miracle, I hope. Like many, in order for me to read the standard size print in a newspaper or a book or a typewritten letter, I need glasses. Now, I've got bifocals on tonight so that I can see all of you and also read my newspaper if I want to. But I can assure you that when the glasses come off, I cannot read, no matter what I do, the standard size print in a newspaper. It's just gray. Or a book. It's just gray. I cannot see it. Now, in order for me to obtain these 20th century wonders, I had to go to an ophthalmologist, and he sat me down in front of his dancing lights and his grids, and I called off letters and numbers, and after about 20 minutes he wrote out a prescription, and I took it down the street to my favorite optician, and I picked out a frame that I thought would look half decent on my face. He told me to come back the following day, and he went to work with his 20th century equipment, and he ground down this specially refined glass, did whatever he has to do with it. I showed up the next morning, he shaped it to my face, and voila, I can read. Now, how many out there in this great audience, how many out there have the same little problem that I have, that you cannot read the regular size print in a newspaper? If somebody held a gun to your head and said, you read the paper or you die, you're going to be gone. No way, no matter what you do, in and out, forward or backward, could you read without the help of your glasses? With just a gray blur. Huh? You know, you pick up your paper or something without your glasses on and it's nothing. How many have the same little problem that I do? Hold your hands up real high a minute. I want to see something. Real high. There's a reason why I'm asking you to hold them up real high. There's a man right there. Come on up. I'm pointing to you. Come on up, sir. Come on up.
Yeah, I got it. Hiya.
How are you? Come on up. What is your name, sir?
Ed Starch.
Ed, live around here?
Oh, in Detroit, in Redford.
Redford. Have we met before?
Never.
Do you have any idea what you're going to do up here? Did we discuss anything?
No,
Obviously,
no.
they now know
No.
that there's no way we did. Now, your glasses are there. Leave them in the pocket.
Okay.
Now, this is this morning's newspaper, Ed. Can you read that without your glasses?
No, I can't.
No matter what?
No matter what.
For sure. If I could show you how to read that without your glasses or without any glasses, would you consider it maybe a little miracle?
Right.
All right. Tiny piece of cardboard. Those of you down front can attest to the fact that there ain't no glass here. It's just a piece, right? It's just a piece of cardboard. There are a few little holes punched in it, but it's just cardboard. Ed, take this in your right hand, hold it up close to your eyes, move it back and forth, and if you can read a sentence, Ed, let them hear it. Take your time.
A Southwest airline 737
Doing great.
thundered off the run.
I'll take that. That's
Thundered off the
fine.
runway.
That's great. All right.
I'll do
Hold on to that. Hold on to that. a minute. Hold on to that. You did great with the newspaper print. Now, these are 6 lines of typewriter type, and this can be tougher. Ed, if you can read this, give it to them with gusto and enthusiasm. They're videotaping. This is your big moment, kid. All right?
All right.
All right. Take your time. Hold this up your eyes, Ed.
Okay.
And let them hear it loud and clear with gusto and enthusiasm.
Oh, man, what a great night this is. And what a miracle. I can read without my glasses. And I'm standing on the same stage with Odd Mandingo. I'll never forget the night. How about that?
Don't go away. Don't go away.
Amazing.
You were marvelous. I would like to reward you. It takes courage to come up here. You had no idea what we're going to do. Here's a first edition autographed copy of my book, A Better Way to Live. And I give it to you
Thank
with
you,
love.
thank you. I bought quite a bit of your books. All right.
Now, why did we do that? Tiny pinholes, whether you put them in a piece of wood, piece of metal, piece of cardboard, doesn't matter what. And look through it. Removes all the blur focus from your eyes and gives you the most perfect form of vision known to man. You know, you almost do some of this when you instinctively squint to see something better. This principle has been known for thousands of years. 400 years before the birth of Christ, the Chinese were reading with an exact model of what you see me holding in my hand. The old principles, whether they involve gravity or nature or optics or success, never change. Picture this scene for me, if you will. never, never change. Picture this scene for me, if you will. It's a miserable, freezing cold, gray, somber day in the very worst part of downtown Cleveland, Ohio. And leaning up against a pawn shop window to protect himself against the driving rain was a bum, a 35-year-old bum. No coat to protect him, shirt hanging out, hair down to his shoulders, bloodshot eyes. And he was afraid, and he was alone, and he was about as low as anybody can get. And all of a sudden, something inside the pawn shop on a shelf caught his eye. It was a little handgun. And attached to the handgun was a yellow tag, $29. And he reached into his pocket and he pulled out 3 soggy $10 bills. It's all he had in the world. And he thought, hey, there's the answer to all my problems. I'll buy that gun. I'll get a couple of bullets. I'll take them back to that mangy room where I'm staying. I'll put the bullets in the gun. I'll put the gun to my head. And I'll pull the trigger. And then never again will I ever have to face that miserable failure in the mirror. That man had indeed been a failure. He had managed in just a few short years to lose everything in life that was important to him. A lovely wife, a beautiful daughter, a nice home, a promising job, and all his faith, and all his hope, and all his self-esteem. He had tried to play the game of life like so many of us do, without taking the time to learn the rules. And now he was paying the price for his ignorance on that miserable, gray, cold morning in Cleveland, Ohio. He was just about ready to throw his life away. That scenario, I'm sorry to say, is repeated hundreds of times every day in this lovely country of ours, when people finally lose all hope in a future that once was so bright and so full of hope. And you know, that doesn't count the thousands who don't take their life, but they just give up. They quit. They stop trying. And they lead what Henry David Thoreau once called lives of quiet desperation. They're dead at 30 or 35 or 40, even though we won't get around to burying them until they're 72. Fortunately, that miserable wretch, that loser, that bum, standing in the cold rain, didn't buy that gun. He didn't blow his life away on that terrible morning almost 35 years ago. Because if he had, I wouldn't be here with you tonight. I guess it's natural, and I expect it, that whenever I'm being interviewed on radio, television, or by the press, I'm always being asked, how did you manage to turn your life around so dramatically? And what did you do that raised you from the gutter to the presidency of Success Unlimited magazine in less than 10 years? And where did you, such a loser with only a high school education, get all the wisdom and the knowledge to write all those best-selling books? And what secrets of success, you see, they insist on calling them secrets, did you learn that you could share with others who are looking for some answers on how to turn their life around? Well, I usually reply that everything I learned is in my books. But I won't do that to you. I didn't come 1,200 miles to tease you or to play games with you tonight. You see, I know from past experience, that in every audience, even this one, whether they be famous top executives, salespeople, athletes, students, small business owners, but in every audience, there is always someone out there who feels the walls closing in and who may be smiling on the outside right now, tonight, and yet they're dying on the inside. And they might be even just about ready to give up on life, as I was long ago. And that person is out there somewhere silently hoping or silently praying that something I might say or something I might do might be just the life preserver that he or she needs to keep from drowning in a sea of misery. What are we doing to ourselves? The number of heroin, cocaine, and crack addicts is growing so swiftly each day that we have finally admitted we can no longer keep anywhere near an accurate count. Did you know we're consuming more booze now per capita than any time in the history of the United States? How's this for a number? Last year, in this wonderful, gorgeous country of ours, more than 300,000 people tried to commit suicide. That's a city. They're prescribing 5 million prescriptions for Valium every 30 days. And we're now treating more than 4,000 new cases of mental illness every 24 hours. Think about that one. There must be a better way to live. And there is a better way to live. And Mr. X or Ms. X, wherever you are out there, I'm going to toss out some life preservers for you. And let's see what happens. The most important secret of success that I had to learn the hard way is that life is a game. It's spiritual and it's holy, but it's a game. And you can't play in that game with any chance at all of winning unless you know the rules. Slight problem. While we were growing up, nobody ever taught us any of the rules. Not once. Not for 45 minutes did anybody ever teach us how to set goals, how to motivate ourselves and others, how to handle adversity when it hits us, how to use our time profitably, how to get rid of the bad habits that we acquire, how to accumulate wealth, how to handle stress, and so much more. And so most of us become spectators in the greatest game of all, pushed aside by the lucky few who seem to know what they want, and more important, who seem to know how to get it. The pros, the great performers, those who know the rules, they're all down on the field where all the action, all the glory, and all the money is. And the rest of us, we're up in the bleachers watching them, and we had to pay to get in. Okay, let's take inventory. Did we possibly learn anything during all those years of schooling that we could apply, that we could use starting tomorrow morning if we wanted to make a real move at changing our life for the better, even better than it is? You bet we did. We all learned how to read with that one great ability that all of you have, the ability to read. You can work miracles in your life. Carlyle many years ago wrote, "What we become depends on what we read after all the professors have finished with us." The greatest university of all, he wrote, is a collection of books. Many years ago wrote, "What we become depends on what we read after all the professors have finished with us. The greatest university of all, he wrote, is a collection of books. And I have a dear friend who is a marvelous speaker. He bills himself as Charles Tremendous Jones, and he is indeed tremendous. He is always telling his audiences, you will be the same person in 5 years as you are today, except for the people you meet and the books you read. Let me repeat that. You will be the same person in 5 years as you are today, except for the people you meet and the books you read. So why not resolve to maybe make a slight alteration in your daily routine? And those of you, and I know there are many out there who have people under their supervision, suggest that they do the same thing. The next night that you're free, instead of collapsing in front of that television set at home, why not take a little trip down to your local library? Walk in, find that special shelf of books that's in every library, that gold mine, that shelf containing books on success, how to achieve it, and how to hold on to it after you get it. Walk up and introduce yourself to some of the most powerful people who have ever lived. People like Napoleon Hill, Norman Vincent Peale, Maxwell Maltz, Dorothea Brand, W. Clement Stone. They're waiting at this very minute to help you, to guide you, and to teach you the rules of the game. Of course, there's a little problem. You have got to go to them. I did many years ago. And it didn't take long for that miserable bum standing in the rain to become not much more than just a bad memory. Thank God. Another important and ageless secret that I had to learn with pain and tears, I had to learn them all with pain and tears. Thick up here. It takes a while. Is that you can never make progress in your life until you appreciate the assets that you already possess. Now, I can always picture, whenever I say that, I know that somebody is out there thinking, I got bills up to here, my car is falling apart, we're a month behind on the rent, kids are talking about college, and this turkey's up here talking about my assets. So let's take an inventory. Let's take an inventory right now so that you realize how valuable, how precious you really are. And let's put a dollar value, if you'd like, on some of these things you have going in your life right now, tonight, at this time. What's it worth to live in this great country? Where would you rather live? What's it worth to be associated with the fine company that you represent? What's your career worth if you remind yourself that probably 95% of the world's population would gladly give up 20 years of their life to change places with any of you? How about your freedom? Put a dollar value on that. How about those you love and who love you? How much would you take to give them up? Your eyes, would you take $1 million for your eyes? Your hands, your feet, 5 million, 10 million? You're really quite wealthy, aren't you? And if it came to a showdown, you wouldn't change what you have right now, tonight, for all the gold in Fort Knox. Several months ago, I did a live television show in Los Angeles, and on the panel with me was a very famous American woman author who shall remain nameless. Somehow we got off to talking about our kids. And I had just seen the last kid leave home before that, and we had an empty nest, and I didn't like it. I miss my kids. And She got off on a tantrum about her two teenage sons who were still living at home, and I kept hearing one word, bonkers. These kids are driving me bonkers. I'm always picking up behind them, bonkers. I'm going bonkers. Stereos tuned to different stations, very loud. They're driving me bonkers, bonkers, bonkers. I listened to it for about 4 or 5 minutes, and finally I stood up and kind of leaned over, and I know I was rude, and I said, and I said, you know, the day is going to come when you're going to walk down that corridor at home and you're going to go past 2 very quiet rooms. And then you're going to say, where did they go? So why don't you go home tonight, I said, and give them both a big hug and tell them you love them, and for God's sakes, don't wait. Another old secret. You don't know how good you are. Wise men have been telling you for centuries that you're only using about 10% of your potential. Now, you're no fool. When you hear that now, you know how to play the game. You're wise. You nod your head like, you really, yeah, you buy that. You're right. Yeah, I'm only using about 10%. But we really don't believe them when they tell us that. Most of us are too busy instead thinking up reasons why we know we can't make it. And when somebody else does succeed, how quick we are to think, wasn't he or she lucky? It's so much easier to feel sorry for yourself, isn't it, than to realize that you are the greatest miracle in the world. And your destiny is in your hands and your hands alone, no matter how you kid yourself. You are in complete control of your tomorrow. But so many of us, I'm afraid, are like a duck that we had in our backyard back in Scottsdale, Arizona for many years. When my youngest son, Matthew, was in the 8th grade, he came home from school one day carrying a shoebox with holes punched in the cover, which should have caused us great concern right there. In the shoebox was a little yellow duckling. They had hatched this little guy in their biology class, and they nurtured him for 5 weeks. And then they had a raffle, and my kid won the duck. So Matt and Daddy went to the lumber company. We got some lumber, and over the corner of our backyard, we built a little hut. Matt did a great job. He painted it white. He carved out a doorway. And over the doorway in red paint, he painted disco duck. Daddy went to the hardware store, and I got 18-inch chicken wire, and we ran a corral around this little setup so this little guy wouldn't go wandering off and get lost. We had disco for 12 years. Disco grew to be a big, beautiful duck, and Matt went off to college, and guess who got to take care of Disco? We got to be good buddies. And then about 2 years ago, it started one morning early, just at dawn. And we made the mistake, we had built this complex right outside our bedroom. But it started right at dawn, quack, 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 loud. Now, I'd heard this quack for 10 years by then, and I knew every little resonance, every little tone. And I knew that something was bugging Disco. Something was wrong. Disco, you could tell, was a whining, complaining quack, 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 quack. Disco was not happy. Disco had a problem of some sort. Either the water, I didn't change it often enough, or the straw in his hut was wet, or the food was lousy, but something was wrong. Disco had a problem. And it's the same problem that so many of us have. Disco didn't know that if he didn't like the conditions of his life, he had it within himself to change them. He had the power to change the conditions in his life. In Disco's case, if he didn't like things the way they are, the way they were, all Disco had to do was flap his wings and leave. But you see, poor Disco, Disco didn't know that he could fly. And neither do you. But you see, poor Disco didn't know that he could fly. And neither do you. Another great truth President Kennedy told us this years ago is that life owes us nothing. Life isn't fair. Never was, and it's never going to be. You might do the work, somebody else gets the credit. You may work twice as hard as your neighbor, and you know you're twice as smart as he or she is, but you also happen to know that he or she is making twice the money you are. There are many times in life when we get a bad hand dealt to us. How do you play a bad hand when you get one? Do you hang on, refusing to quit, even though there's no guarantee you'll succeed? Or do you whine and you pity yourself because you are convinced that your problems are so much more terrible than anybody else's? Poor baby. Years ago, when I was editing Success and Living in Chicago, I developed a lovely friendship with a man called Wilton Hall, who had his own little magazine down in South Carolina called Quote. It was a monthly magazine, contained a whole bunch of quotes each month, and it was great. Wilton sent me this card. This is the actual card that I've had, I don't know, 25, 30 years. It's not going to fall apart. But I fell in love with this thing. And I've shared it with I don't know how many audiences since then, but I use it for me too. Because whenever I hit things during the day that aren't going exactly the way I want them to go, poor baby, again, and I start to feel sorry for myself for some dumb reason or other, about 3 minutes with this little paper straightens me right out. And I'd like to share it with you tonight. It's called Lord, Forgive Me When I Whine. Today upon a bus, I saw a lovely girl with golden hair. I envied her. She seemed so gay and wished I were as fair. When suddenly she rose to leave, I saw her hobble down the aisle. She had one leg and wore a crutch. But as she passed, a smile. Oh, God, forgive me when I whine. I have 2 legs. The world is mine. I stopped to buy some candy. The lad who sold it had such charm. I talked with him. He seemed so glad. If I were late, 'twould do no harm. And as I left, he said to me, I thank you. You have been so kind. It's nice to talk with folks like you. You see, he said, I'm blind. Oh, God, forgive me when I whine. I have 2 eyes. The world is mine. Later, while walking down the street, I saw a child with eyes of blue. He stood and watched the others play. He did not know what to do. I stopped a moment, and then I said, why don't you join the others, dear? He looked ahead without a word. And then I knew he couldn't hear. Oh, God, forgive me when I whine. I have 2 ears. The world is mine. With feet to take me where I'd go, with eyes to see the sunset's glow, with ears to hear what I would know. Oh, God, forgive me when I whine. I'm blessed indeed. The world is mine. We sure do forget to count our blessings, don't we? And any morning that you awake, and this happens to the most powerful, dynamic individual, so don't feel it's just you. Any morning that you awake and you don't want to go out there and face that terrible, cruel world, you don't want to go out there and make that first sales call, you don't want to go down and face that ugly boss in the office, you don't want to go anywhere. You just assume go into the closet, hold the door closed, suck your thumb, stay there. Happens to everybody. I see a lot of nodding heads, but it happens to everybody. It happens to the most powerful individual. I'm going to give you a prescription that will knock all of that out of your mind and send you out there with blue sky and sunshine and birds singing and music, and it'll work every day. And it'll never fail, and it won't cost you a penny. And it's going to do more for you than your steak and eggs and your orange juice or your coffee and anything to get you out there with the right frame of mind to do a good day's work. The next morning that you awake with this attitude, you know, oh, I don't want to do it. I don't want to even get out of my pajamas. I just want to stay put. I don't want to do anything. And it happens to everybody, not just... Here's all you have to do to change that around in 10 minutes and send you out into the world like the person you are and the person you can be. All you have to do to change that mood is pick up your morning newspaper. Now, under no circumstances should you look on the front page, because then you really want to get in the closet and hide. So forget the front page and just open your newspaper. Just open your newspaper to the page with the death notices on it. And on that page, you will find a long list of names of people who would be absolutely delighted to change places with you with all of your little aggravations and heartaches and pains. Try it. I guarantee you it'll work. And it won't cost you a penny. Another secret, I'm going to hit close to home with this one. Failures always seem to act as if they had 1,000 years to live. Why? Because they have no confidence at all that they can handle today's challenges today. And how do they avoid ever challenging themselves? 100 different ways. Some of them drink too much. Some of them party too much. Some of them sleep 2 to 6 hours a night more than they need. And others spend endless hours doing crossword puzzles or jigsaw puzzles or sitting in front of that television set. Don't worry, they'll tell you. I'll take care of everything tomorrow. I've been around this whole planet a long time, and I've seen a lot of calendars. But I have never yet seen a calendar with a tomorrow on it. Never treat time as if you had an unlimited supply. None of us have a contract with life. About 2 months ago in Mexico City to about 12,000, I told them, there's no tomorrow. And you should have seen panic set in. They're all looking at each other going, no mañana, there's no mañana, there's no mañana. Almost started a riot. You've heard this 1,000 times. But try to live each day as if it's the only one you're going to have. And that's wonderful to do. But this other part you haven't heard 1,000 times, and it's just as important. And I would love to see all of you try it tomorrow morning. It is wonderful to live every day as if it's the only one you're going to have. But try this tomorrow morning and watch your life change. Watch your life change almost immediately. Tell yourself that beginning tomorrow morning, even when you crawl out of bed, starting with the people in your own family, and then people all day long, the people you work with, strangers you meet during the day, the person who waits on you in the stores, everybody you meet starting tomorrow, you're going to treat like you never treated them before. You're going to treat each one of them as if you knew a deep, dark secret about them. And the deep, dark secret is that they were going to be dead at midnight. Now, think about this a minute. If you met me tomorrow morning and you knew that at midnight I'm out of here, you would treat me, I know you would, with more love, with more care, with more consideration than you ever normally would treat me. More consideration than you ever normally would treat me. And what do you suppose I'd give back to you? You're right, exactly the same. More love, more care, and more consideration than you would have ever normally got from that person or from me. And if you did that all day long, with everyone you met. And you did it the next day and the next day. Tell me your life wouldn't change for the better. I dare you. And what would it cost you? Nothing. You're right. You can change your life with that one little principle. Another great truth from the past: if you want to succeed, you have got to learn to live with failure. Mistakes, blunders, defeats, you can't avoid them. But if you let them make you gun shy, so that once you get beat, once you get knocked down, you're afraid to try again, you're making a terrible, terrible mistake. Mark Twain, many years ago, wrote the story about this cat who one day, for want of something better to do, jumped up on a hot stove and burned his tummy. That cat never jumped up on a hot stove again. But you know what? Cat never jumped up on a cold stove either. So many times in life, experience can actually be harmful to you if it prevents you from trying again. Just remember that even the most successful lives have chapters of failure. And the only ones who never fail, we know who they are. The ones who never try. Years ago, I was editing Success Unlimited magazine in Chicago, and it was the year, you baseball fans will appreciate this, you baseball fans will know there was a year when Hank Aaron was getting ready to break Babe Ruth's lifetime home run record. Hank had 710 and needed 5 more, and I'm sitting in my office in Chicago, and I got this crazy idea, and I called his ball club. They gave me the promotion man, publicity man, and I identified myself, and I said, now, I know he has 710 home runs, and he needs 5 more to break Babe Ruth's all-time record, but I've been sitting here wondering, lifetime, how many strikeouts does Aaron have? And he said, strikeouts, sir? And I said, yeah. He said, I got to put you on hold for that one. So he did for 4 or 5 minutes, and then he came back on the line, and he said, as of last night, Aaron has 710 home runs, needs 5 more to break Babe Ruth's record. And I said, I know that. And he has 1,264 strikeouts. And I thought, wow, here's an analogy I'm going to use for the rest of my life. Because here's the greatest home run hitter who has ever lived. Who has ever lived. And even he had to strike out almost twice for every time he hit a home run. Yeah, life is a game. But you don't have to hit a home run every time in order to be a winner. And if you don't believe me, you ask Hank. Another secret, at least I'm afraid this is still a secret to so many. No man or woman is an island. Success can absolutely not be achieved alone. There is no such thing as a self-made man or a self-made woman. All of us need help to achieve, to grow, or to recover from a disaster. But Lillian Roth, those of you old-timers will remember, was a great stage personality in the early 40s. And Lillian saw one of the most promising careers in theatrical history go down the drain because of her drinking. She lost everything. And years later, when she was recovering, she wrote a marvelous book that became a great movie that I know many of you have seen called I'll Cry Tomorrow. In Lillian's book, she wrote that she was absolutely powerless to do one little thing toward changing the miserable conditions in her life until she was finally able to say 3 little words. I need help. All of us need help. Nobody, underlined, makes it all alone. Back in the 15th century, in a little village in the suburbs of Nuremberg in Germany, was a family with 15 children, 15 kids. Daddy worked 3 jobs just to keep food on the table for this army. 2 of the sons, 2 of the boys had a dream. They were both very talented, artist-wise. They were great with their pencils and their pens. And they both wanted to go to the art academy in Nuremberg. And yet they both knew full well there was no way to depend on Daddy for any help at all financially. There was no money to send them to the academy. So these 2 kids were pretty sharp. They worked up a pact. The pact was easy. They would toss a coin. The loser would go down to work in the mines. And with part of his earnings, he would support the winner. That brother would go to the art academy. And the brother working in the mines would support him for 4 years. And then when that brother graduated, either with his artwork by then, if he was that good, or if he had to, he'd go into the mines, they'd change places, and they'd both have their degree. And so one day, these 2 very special boys tossed a coin. Their names are very similar. Albrecht Dürer won the toss. Albert Dürer lost. Albert went down into the mines, and Albrecht went off to the academy where he was almost an immediate sensation. His line drawings, his engravings, his oils, his watercolors, after the first year were better than anything any of his professors could do. He was just a natural genius. And the years passed, and Albrecht graduated and came home to a wonderful celebration out on the lawn. The table piled high with food, the whole family there. And at the proper moment, Albrecht stood with his glass of wine to drink a toast to his beloved brother Albert for the years of sacrifice. And he finished by saying, "And now, Albert, now it's your turn. Now you can go to the academy, and I will take care of you." And all eyes turned down the other end of the table, because Albert was still sitting, his hands over his face, and he was shaking his head back and forth, and they all heard him say, "No, no, no." And finally he stood, and he wiped the tears from his cheeks. And he said, "No, dear brother, it's too late for me. You see what 4 years in the mines have done to my hands? I have smashed every finger at least once. And by now I have arthritis so bad in my right hand that I can't even hold the wine glass to return your beautiful toast, much less hold a pen or a brush. It's too late for me." 400 years have passed, and by now Albrecht Dürer's work hangs in every great museum in the world. And yet I'll wager that most of you know Albrecht Dürer for only one of his masterpieces. Because one day, to honor his beloved brother, Albrecht painted his brother's hands. He called it hands in the beginning, but through the centuries, all of us have lovingly called it the praying hands. The next time you see that masterpiece, take another look. Look at the fingers, and let it remind you, if you need to be reminded again, that nobody makes it alone. Of course, all of us have our own set of praying hands if you stop to think about it, huh? You know, all you have to do is put those palms together, stick the fingers out a little bit, raise your eyes. Don't be afraid to say, "I need help." You'd be surprised how close help is if you ask for it. Don't be afraid to say, "I need help." You'd be surprised how close help is if you ask for it. Take it from one who knows. One more secret, and I pray to God that you remember this. next week, next month, next year, as you keep chasing after those two very elusive butterflies called success and happiness. Failures spend so much of their time reliving their past mistakes or worrying about tomorrow's problems that they really and truly let this beautiful day, which is all we've got, get away. I want to share something very special with you. Something written by an 82-year-old looking back on her life. I want to share this with you in the very worst way. If I had my life to live over, I'd try to make more mistakes next time. I would relax. I would limber up. I would be crazier than I've been on this trip. I know very few things I'd take seriously anymore. I'd certainly be less hygienic. I would take more chances. I would take more trips. I would scale more mountains. I would swim more rivers. And oh, how I would watch more sunsets. I would eat more ice cream and fewer beans. I would have more actual troubles and fewer imaginary ones. You see, I was one of those people who lived sensibly and sanely, hour after hour and day after day. Oh, I've had my moments. And if I had it to do all over again, I'd have many more of them. In fact, I try not to have anything else. Just moments. One after another. Instead of living so many years ahead of my day. I've always been one of those people who never went anywhere without a thermometer, a hot water bottle, a goggle, a raincoat, and a parachute. If I had it to do all over again, I'd travel lighter, much lighter than I have. And I would start barefoot earlier in the spring. And I'd stay that way later in the fall. And I would ride more merry-go-rounds and catch more gold rings and greet more people and pick more flowers and dance more often. If I had it to do all over again. But you see, I don't. Well, like that old Japanese mother, I hope I've been able to break a couple of branches for you tonight to help you in case you wandered off course. And Mr. X or Ms. X, wherever you are out there, don't you dare give up. You're too precious to lose. You just grab a life preserver. And just, if things get real tough, just remind yourself that if Mandino can make it, you can make it. I love you all. Thank you for being so nice to me. God bless you.